Awesome. So we have a few questions for you guys just to get started, just so we know where people are coming from and who is going to be joining us on the webinar. So if you don't mind popping your name, what organization you're part of, and maybe where you're from into the chat. It's really nice to just kind of get everybody all together and see where everybody's from off the get-go. Oh, 2 people from Desert Valley Hospice in Soyuz. That's awesome. Full team here. Who else have we got? London, Ontario. Fantastic. United Way in Regina. Awesome. Nice to have you here, Sabrina. Awesome. Well, we definitely don't want to waste the people's time who is here right away, nice and early. So we're definitely going to dive into this, and hopefully people will see the chat and know to intro themselves as they're coming in. So we want to get started just by giving a little bit of an intro as to what we're all here for. So good morning, good afternoon. Not sure exactly what time zones everyone's from. My name's Emily from Trellis. So before we get started, I just wanted to do a little quick intro as to who I was and what Trellis is. And then I'm gonna pass it over to Shelly for the majority of our webinar, because Shelly is most definitely the expert here and she has some fantastic tips for you. So my name's Emily. This is the first webinar that I have ever led, so apologies for the tech confusions at the beginning, but we're all sorted now and I'm really excited about that. So I'm the partnerships lead at Trellis. That means I get to work with fantastic experts like Shelly, and we just get to build content and delight all of our charity clients with fantastic resources and people that can help you raise more money for your organization. But I want to transition things over to Shelly right away. We do have a sneak peek of a new Trellis feature coming up at the end, so I'll get to briefly share a little bit more about Trellis at the end. But for now, it is most definitely Shelly's show. So I know Shelly as an amazing entrepreneur who has been helping hundreds of charity clients raise more money for their organizations. This has been a lot of experience with live auctions and now like a heavy focus on virtual and events and what that means in the preparation of these things and how you're going to engage people in the process. So I actually want to ask Shelly a couple questions so that she can do the best job at introducing herself and what she does. So Shelly, do you mind telling us why you decided to become an auctioneer and a little bit more about your entrepreneur life that you have been living for the majority of your life?
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you so much for asking that, and thank you for having me here. I love sharing the message of how, with just a little bit of higher strategy thought, that we all can raise more money for those organizations that we have passion for, that we are touched by, that we have family members going through something, and that's just my reason for being. But I owned a marketing company for 25 years, and in 2005 I had a life change, and I'm still doing the same thing. And I thought, golly, I want to do something different, but I don't know what that is. Long story short, a few weeks later, I was surfing channels at home, and I came upon a Discovery segment channel that had a segment that talked about a husband and wife team who were going to auction school to learn how to sell real estate at auction and also how to raise more money for charity. And in a second, not even a millisecond, I was watching that and I thought, well, I can do that. That looks fun. That would be me. And, you know, everything fell together and came together, and I've been doing this for 14 years. So it's a funny little story where my next career came off a little channel surfing. So, hey, that could be a good thing too.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Shelly. Well, I'm sure I'm not the only one that is dying to hear all of your tips and tricks. So I will let you take it away from here. And attendees, you'll hear from me a little bit at the end with that sneak peek of our new Trellis feature and our upcoming webinar as well. But Shelly, please take it away with everything that you have planned for our amazing attendees today.
Well, fantastic. So just briefly, we've got 3 principles to earning record-breaking live auction fundraising results. We're going to talk about the 5-40-55. We're going to talk about the rule of 7s, and then the rule of 3s. Now you can tell I'm a bit of a research geek, and I am because I owned this marketing company for forever. But just a little bit of research and a little bit of background can really help you just dive into your donors' hearts and get them to write a bigger check. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want? To serve our mission in a big way? So then we'll go over some bonus secrets that we've got for you. We'll have a Q&A, and then I can't wait to hear more about Trellis's new release because they are amazing. Trellis is the founder, the staff, people like Emily, they all have the passion behind them to be able to help others like us raise money for charity. So I hope that you'll give them a real shot and support them like I do. So let's get started. So I want to talk first about the 5-40-55. It is a principle about buying behaviors. And about 8 years ago, we did an internal study. We looked at 75 auctions across all of the auctions that we did. And we looked at how many people bid at live, how many people bid on silent, how many people played games, and then looked at the revenue that resulted from those bids. We looked at the number of times that each bidder bid, how many times that they won, and all of those details, and that the results became clear whether your audience was 100 or 5,000. So how that breaks down is that only 5% of any audience can throw down in the thousands. Buy that signature live auction item, support you in a big way at the paddle raise, or even just be a major sponsor for you. So that 5%, we love them, we want to cater to them, but there's more people in the audience that can and want to give. And that's what the 545 tells us. So you've got the 5%, which are the heavy hitters. Then there's 40% of your auction that really wants to play. They want to raise their bidder number, but they're just not in the financial spot to do it. They might have kids in private school, saving for their first daughter's marriage. The situations are endless. They will be there to support you and they will do everything they can, but typically not in a financial way. So then we have the 5%, which are the heavy hitters, the 40%, which are not quite there to support you in a larger way. That leaves 55% of your audience that can and want to play. I guarantee you, each one of those 55%ers, they want to raise that bidder number. They want to feel their heartbeat rise, and they want to walk away with an auctioneer or a fundraiser saying, sold to bidder number 542 for $1,750. Or whatever the scenario is. They are committed and they are there for you. But if you've done events for a while, virtual or in person, you know that 55% grouping just kind of gets lost in the mix. So we suggest that you really pay attention to that 55% and create 1, 2, or 3 items that will be really attractive to the 55s and that they will eat up. They will be so happy. They will walk away bidders and winners, and they'll be talking about your event for years because it was their first opportunity to win. So that's the 5-40-55. There's more information on the 5-40-55 on our website. And we'll also be talking about a class coming up that you can learn more about some of these strategies too. So let's jump from the 5-40-55 to the rule of sevens. Now, if any of you have been in marketing or advertising, you've heard of the rule of sevens. Well, when I went to school, before the wheel was round, it was kind of square. It was like the rule of 18s or the rule of 16s. But with the advent of social media and the advent of digital marketing, it's really now the rule of sevens. And what that rule of 7 means is that your potential target needs to hear or see your message 7 times in order to build trust and to consider taking action. And whether that action is signing up to attend an event, to donating at an event or buying a product or service. So that really bodes to how you do event promotion, because you can craft and create the most engaging event, but unless people know about it and know why it's important to attend your event, then it's probably not going to stay on their radar. But if you can do a campaign with existing donors and new donors that talk about what the reality and the seriousness of the mission that you serve, the fun and the excitement and the entertainment that they're going to experience at the event, and then the heart moment of when they know that they have helped an individual, they have helped an organization, and they can leave that event feeling really good about themselves. That is really the rule of sevens. So I encourage you to really look at that with traditional advertising and with online advertising. So can you all say it with me and type it in the chat? The rule of sevens. We're going to promote our event with the rule of sevens. And let me know that you got that, because it is so, so very important. So we had the 5, 40, 55. We have the rule of sevens. And then we're going to talk about the rule of threes. Now, the rule of threes is more in the presentation part. So what that means is the rule of the number 3 is the smallest number that can create a pattern in someone's brain. So when you're thinking about your presentation, when you're thinking about how to do your run of show, when you're thinking about when to have your heart moment, when to have your entertainment, when to have your fundraising, you want to think of the rule of threes and how you keep engaging people and your audience into that rule of three, so that you're enrolling them with every piece of your event, every moment. You're enrolling them into that moment of fundraising. So now the rule of threes has been around as long as Aristotle. So that is a very long time. And it's the three musketeers. It's the three little bears. It's the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I bet you guys can think about your threes too, whether it's something personal, whether it's something political, whether it's something in your work, but the threes make a difference. One of the stories I like to talk about in explaining the rule of threes in performance is we were doing a little event a few years ago for an organization out of Boulder, Colorado, that helped support and promote women's programs in Africa. And they had one of the project managers come to the event, and he was talking about the ruralness of the area with the water challenges and the safety challenges and the state of affairs for young women in that part of Africa, let alone the education of those women. And I remember standing side of stage, getting ready to go up and do the paddle raise. And I remember the young man talking about things and how his voice changed and how he started small and then got a little bit larger and a little bit larger. So when I got up to stage, I took some of the statements that he made throughout his 45-minute presentation, and I put them together and then began the paddle raise. And thus ensued the highest dollar amount raised that organization has ever raised to date. And as I recall, it was something like, ladies and gentlemen, this is how we sustain a community. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how we collectively change our world. And ladies and gentlemen, this is how we change the lives of just one person at a time. And it was a beautiful thing. So since then, that 6 or 7 year ago mark, I have done that at every event, and it has worked amazingly. So I want you to think about how your rule of threes can inspire your audience. Does that make sense? Well, I'm hoping so. So there you have it with the 5, 40, 55. You have the rule of sevens and the rule of threes. I'm curious if there are any questions at this point. Emily, is that something that you can help us with?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Shelly. We haven't gotten any questions in the chat. If anything has come up for anyone along the way, please do so. But before we jump into Shelly's bonus secret, I wanted to ask, Shelly, do you have any tips on keeping people engaged in a virtual event? Perhaps you can tie it to your rule of threes, because virtual and hybrid are this very new thing that's very new for most charities, and some people still haven't explored yet. Are there any ways that you can incorporate the rule of three into a virtual event to make sure that your attendees and your donors are staying engaged throughout the show?
Well, absolutely. Engagement is key, whether it's hybrid, whether it's virtual, whether it is in person. And that has always been a challenge for as long as I've done fundraising and marketing, right? So it really comes down to understanding who your audience is. What are their values? What are their likes? What are their dislikes, right? And making sure that whatever kind of presentation you have fits into who your audience is. Because if you've got part of your audience that really wants to see things and learns things visually, then you want to have really amazing visual graphics. If many of your audience members learn kinesthetically, which means they have to be doing something, then you want to be asking a lot of questions. You want to be getting engagement, even if it's virtual, through the chat or through your drop-ins, if it's a hybrid event and you've got mini events going on. Because every time you add new people to your presentation, it is like adding to the party, right? So an example of that with a live event would be you're selling a live auction item, and let's say it's a chef's dinner for 24 people at this amazing restaurant. Well, if the chef is there, bring the chef on stage and actually have that conversation, right? So it really depends on what kind of event you're staging, but the more you can involve people from your audience, the more engagement you're going to get and keep them engaged all the way through.
Fantastic. Thanks, Shelly. A question just popped into the chat, so we'll answer it now before going on. I'll just read it out here. I'd be curious to hear some suggestions on how best to host an online virtual live auction and paddle raising. This is so successful for us because it was managed in person. How do you create the same sort of energy and vibes to donors who are bidding online? And then any recommended software programs, which maybe Trellis can answer after you talk about just how to engage people in a virtual live auction.
Well, I thank you. Thank you for that question. I think that's a back and forth between Emily and I, because the number one answer, the number one question that I ask and that I will answer right now is you've got to have a professional and extremely functional software fundraising platform, and that's Emily and Trellis. So that is number one, by far the first key, right? And then when you think about how you're structuring that engagement, because in a in-person on-site event, you have about 2.5 hours of unfettered attention from each guest. And that means from the silent auction to the dinner service to whatever kind of entertainment to fundraising before they either physically or mentally check out. So you can imagine with virtual events, it is night and day different. The industry statistic, as I checked it 2 weeks ago, was at a virtual event, you have 23 minutes of unfettered attention. 23 minutes. That doesn't seem like a whole lot, does it? It's not, right? So the key to that engagement is having each part of your program short, sweet, and to the point, right? At an online event, you could have a board chair or an executive director come up and speak for 15, maybe 20 minutes if they were so inclined to do that. You've got to cut that to 3 to 5 minutes. right? Every talk has got to be that 3 to 5 minute. Videos that used to be 3 minutes to 7 minutes, if you need need them to be around 2 minutes to 4 minutes total. And then it's the event production that keeps that engagement going. It's just like the little quip that we had in the beginning of this webinar where we couldn't get the technology just right. Every time you have something like that, you're losing 20 to 30% of your audience. We call that the continuity of a presentation. And I've got way more on that if you care to learn more. But it's keeping that production going. So the first speaker cues and seamlessly the transition happens to the video. Once the video is concluded, it seamlessly transitions to the heart moment. Once the heart moment is done, it seamlessly transitions to the fundraising, right? And keeping that moving along in a slow, deliberate pattern. When you think of the continuity of a presentation, I want you to think of a circle. And at the top of the circle is where the presentation begins. And obviously on the back side, it's where the presentation ends. Every time you start along your journey in that circle and you stop and start, you are asking your audience to stop what they were thinking about and think about something else. Every time you make that ask, hello, we're talking about this. Nope, stop now. Nope, we're going to go look at this. You are losing another 10 or 15% of your audience. So imagine if you stop and start, stop and start, stop and start all the way along, how much of your audience is truly left to make the ask of and to be that support that you're needing, right? So keep in mind the continuity of the presentation, how you're putting together that run of show, and really think about how it's smooth for somebody's head. I want to think about this, and then I can think about that, and all of that makes sense to my head, and I'm happy. Because when you stop and start and ask them to change, the brain gets a little confused, and we sure don't want any car wrecks in anybody's head on event night, right? So anyway, that's just a snippet of what I recommend for engagement.
Thanks, Shelly. Just to frame kind of a different side of it to add on to what Shelly was saying is, yeah, like Shelly was saying, not only do you need to make sure that you're smoothly, as Shelly was saying, with the tech and the production quality, but very smoothly move people along and continue emotion over from one piece to another. So what I mean by this is, when I've heard this from so many auctioneers who have gone from live to now virtual, is that when you're in the room with those people, you have the ability to connect with them in person. You can joke around with them. You can create different levels of emotion, whether it be something really sad or something really inspirational or maybe something really funny. I've heard from a lot of people that that piece is a lot easier for at least the auctioneers to do when in person. And so when online, you have to create a slightly different strategy. So one important piece, like Shelly said, is going to be getting an auctioneer who knows how to say things to pull that out of their donors. Like the rule of three, of they can kind of say the right things, whether it be their script or something they've learned kind of on the job, of you have someone who is ready to go, who's just going to keep their energy very high. And then in addition to that, in a virtual setting, it's actually a fantastic opportunity to pre-plan more of the emotional pieces that are going to go along with these live auctions. So what we've seen work really successful is pairing a very emotional video. Perhaps you deal with children that you're going to be helping, maybe it's sick children. Imagine the emotion that you can create with a video. And then if you get your auctioneer to seamlessly transition out of that emotional video into their rule of three of, hey, did you see X, Y, Z in that video? Here is why we are participating in this fund in need, in this live auction, whatever it may be. And if it is a live auction item and you maybe want to stay away from the more heavy emotional side of things, which we've seen work much better with the fund in need, for the live auction, you have a fantastic opportunity to bring in those chefs who might not have been able to be there in person to say, hey, I'm going to be the person you see if you buy this live auction item, for example. And then just for a couple specific takeaways as well, Shelly and I were talking about how there's kind of a little bit of a change that you have to make if you're no longer in person. Like Shelly was saying, the attention span doesn't last as long. And so in Shelly's experience of, it was 700, I believe, auctions or something like that she've done, an unreal number, is that you can get away with about 10 different items. And if some of those are doubles, maybe it equals like to a little bit higher than that in a live setting. Whereas when in a virtual setting, what we've seen work well is starting with a test item. So what I mean by that is maybe it's something you put up for free. Maybe it's this little art piece or kind of this little joke thing, and people are just bidding like $1 up from each other. So the winning bid ends up paying about $10. But this ensures that everyone understands how to use your software before they're going to start bidding with big numbers where you really want to make sure that the donors know what they're doing. So you can start with this test one. And then as they're bidding on this test auction item, you can get a sense of, okay, are all of our donors understanding how this platform is working? Is there anything that we need to kind of manage before we move into our big items? So after that test item is out of the way, you've created all this excitement, got everyone involved, and then we recommend going into 3 auction items. You can maybe push it to 5, but after 3, like Shelly was saying, in the virtual environment, it just gets a little bit overkill. And so you're not able to do quite as much as you were in a live setting. And then for the funded needs specifics, paddle raising, how you've listed it here, we actually have our next webinar happening in 2 weeks is going to be very specific on funded need. So with that funded need piece, like I kind of mentioned with a very emotional video that you might pre-create before your funded need, we actually have a webinar happening next week where it's going to dive into the specifics of what you have to do before your event to make sure that your funded need is successful. So that's all I'll mention about it right now. But if funded needs are something you really want to dive into in a virtual setting, then I definitely recommend attending the next one. But thank you for that fantastic question. If anyone else has any questions throughout this last piece of Shelly's presentation, please pop it in the chat because we will have more time for questions. But until then, Shelly has her bonus secret about some virtual event essentials. So I'll pass it back to you, Shelly.
Oh, well, thank you. And I just love what you added on, Emily, to the last question. It usually seems that it's one question and it takes a long time to answer. But in this world that we live in and that we work in, there isn't just one strategy. There isn't just one answer, right? So you want to be open to whatever is out there and choose the best strategy and the best tactic that's going to work for you and your audience. So I love the lesser amount of items, the faster it's going to go, and then that emotional part of the paddle raise. You know, storytelling is key when it comes to a fundraising, and that's whether it's virtual or in person. So love that. So just for you guys today, we have a bonus secret, which are the top 10 virtual fundraising essentials. Now, I'm sure that you guys have studied virtual fundraising for months now, all of 2021 all of 2020 and into 2021. And for many of you, you've done virtual events. Could you guys note in the Q&A, just with or a hand raise, how many have done virtual events so far since our life changed in March of 2020?
We got 2, 3, at least 3 have done 4.
Oh my
5.
God. You guys are experts. You guys are the true test. So I know I don't want to take a book from you, but what was the number one thing you did to make your event successful? Can you just put a quick word or something in?
So the first thing we got was engaging and interactive.
Yay. I'm curious about the interactive during virtual, so I love that.
Sponsor buy-in. That's a really big piece. That's fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you guys keep putting those in because what you've said are very unique to your organizations, because many of the organizations that we've worked with haven't gotten to even where you are today. So I would imagine you're here to learn more to make your next event more successful. And for those of you that have not done your first virtual event, you are here to tee up your first virtual fundraiser. So our top 10 virtual secrets are, well, they're not really secret, but that sounds cute, right? But it's really simple. It's developing a well-crafted story, which we talked about, right? It is finding and integrating your fundraising software that works for you. It is choosing the right live stream or webinar platform for your audience. It's hiring a solid event production team. It is booking a professional auctioneer or fundraiser to help you through the process. And there are plenty more things, but the last one I really want to talk about is planning a raffle or a special prize drawing. Now, earlier on in the webinar, Emily talked about doing a giveaway, right? Because when you give something back to someone, even if it has a little cost to you, it's got major impact with donors. So we always like that giveaway. But Trellis is doing something really exciting that I was hoping that they would talk about. And they're doing it in Canada, but thinking about how that could work in the US as well. So I'm going to throw that back to you, Emily. Are you prepared to talk about that piece?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a very exciting new piece of Trellis. This is actually not the surprise that I'm going to be sharing in a moment here. But Trellis aims to be your all-in-one revenue driving platform. And a big part of in-person events are often raffles and draw prizes and that. And so Trellis is working very hard to make the process easier for you by becoming certified for online raffles, 50/50s, whatever it may be. But it's still very possible. You just got to make sure you start with your license because those are always the trickiest part of this process. And then once you have that out of the way, it's a fantastic opportunity to get incredibly creative. And even if you don't want to do a raffle or 50/50, like Shelly was saying, of some sort of draw prize or prize giveaway, the Trellis site can also do e-commerce options. And so how we've seen people use that is perhaps they're buying a $5 entry into a best dressed contest. And so then you can encourage people to show up prepared and get excited to buy their ticket and attend because they planned out their outfit and that. And it's this little way to kind of add in a contest aspect, this little exciting piece, just to encourage people to not only donate a little bit more, but also find additional ways to engage people. We've also seen a golf tournament do it where you could buy a mulligan, I believe is what it's called, where you purchase this mulligan, I think it was $20. And then when you purchase that, you're allowed to take 1 point off one of your like really bad golf scores. And so it was kind of this fun way to get those really competitive golfers to make an additional purchase and just kind of find some like fun and engagement out of these little games that you can do. And believe me, we've seen a ton of creative things on the platform. So whatever you can think of, Trellis can most definitely support what you want to do.
And it could be as simple as some large glass vestibule with jelly beans in it and asking them to guess the number of jelly beans. It sounds really simple. It sounds very elementary, but people love it. They really do. I won one of those back in my 20s and I still tell the story of it, right? So, because who is going to guess if there's 4,723 jelly beans? Does that sound like I remember? Right? In this vestibule, who is going to remember that they didn't, that if they won, what the situation was, right? So even if it's simple, we won't send them the vestibule, but you probably send them a gift certificate for some jelly beans and whatever the prize is going to be. People will remember that. It will engage more of your audience. It'll also engage your 40%, which are not quite ready to bid at live or paddle. So think about all of that when you're planning that virtual event and your hybrid events. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Shelly, we did get another question in the chat here. I believe I'm interpreting it correctly. It says, can you share info about a virtual auction that is not live, that runs over a period of time? I believe they mean a silent auction. Shelly, do you have any experience when it comes to silent auctions or how you can incorporate that into your event?
Well, absolutely, but I do want to get a little clarification. for the person who asked the question, are you thinking of just an online auction only and not a live component? Because that'll drive the answer for sure.
Donna says yes.
Fantastic. So what's really interesting about that is, and I love to tell this story, is I've been doing this now since what, 2006, 2007. And the advent of fundraising software came on the market in around 2000. Even by 2008, it was still one of those things that was kind of hanging in the wings, and people liked them, they wanted to think about them, but most organizations couldn't embrace them for a multitude of reasons. So fundraising software really did not become popular until, and industry-wide acceptable, until maybe 2011, 2012, 2013. And I think the reason for that is because everyone was so used to what happened for years and years and years, and how paper bidding, and you had hoverers who would stand to bid over an item until they finally won it or the auction closed. But we started counseling our clients on online auction back in 2009, because it is by far the simplest way to sell products and services, and also garner financial support to the broadest audience for the least investment of dollars. I know that's a big mouthful, but it's absolutely true. The online auction is something that every organization should do, whether they're doing a live virtual or an in-person virtual. You know, you've got to fundraise all year long. And an online silent auction is incredible. One of our top clients who we worked for 6-7 years, they are very media friendly. They're everybody in this town knows who they are. And this year they chose to do an online auction. And when I was catching up with the director in early January, here was her statement to me. And I'm a live auctioneer, don't forget that. Her statement was, we earned more money in a shorter period of time with 20% of the expenses that it used to take us when we would do a live virtual event. That's incredible, right? Because they were able to reach a larger audience in a shorter period of time for a lesser investment. So my advice is do it, and do it until it's just not doing for you.
That's awesome. Thanks, Shelly. Donna, just to answer your question a little further, from what I've seen from the charities that have been successful on our platform, is I've heard that kind of the magic number for the length of an online auction is 4 days. So 4 days being just long enough that people have time to come back and make all the biddings, but not so long where you see kind of a like U-shaped curve of who is actually participating in the auction. Too long and people just aren't going to show up for the middle piece, because there's the excitement at the beginning and then obviously even more excitement at the end. And what you can do is pair this 4 days with your event. So say you don't want to do a live auction or fund a need, but you want to do a silent auction leading up to an event. A fantastic way to do it is have the silent auction close right as your live event is wrapping up. And what I've seen a lot of people do is actually share and like kind of screen share and scroll through and open up some of the items that are still available for bid as a piece of their live event. So you can pull something up and you can go, a signed guitar for this price, you guys got to get on it, and kind of get your hosts and the people speaking to really hype up some of these items that you want to encourage more bids on, or you just want to showcase that are there because perhaps people haven't seen it. And then on Trellis, you have this really neat feature where you can actually highlight who those items were donated by. And knowing that that can be one of the biggest hurdles to get over to actually make your silent auction happen is just collecting those items to begin with. what you can do is really make it attractive to people who might want to donate or sponsor an item by telling them, hey, your logo is going to be showcased. We're going to have a link to your site. And then there's even a place on your page where if you want to like showcase some information or those logos on your event page as well, you can do that too. And so then you can use that as leverage in a way of saying, hey, if you do sponsor this item, you're going to get some great marketing out of it as well. And then of course, when you donate it, it goes to this fantastic XYZ cause, whatever you happen to be part of. So those are just a couple little tidbits that we've seen from our clients that work well as well.
That's awesome. They all again, they all make sense, right? So you take the tidbits from everything you learn and you put them together to make it right for your audience. It's amazing. Great. Any other questions?
There's nothing in the chat right now. If anything pops up, I'll definitely let you know. But Shelly, I want to make sure that we have time to get to the very special offer that you have for the people that happen to be on the webinar today.
Oh, absolutely. So Emily will be sending you guys out the virtual essentials. So you'll get that in your email, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I added it to the chat, and then I'll also make sure that it's in the email follow-up as well.
Perfect. Okay. So as Emily alluded to earlier, I have done over 700 events as a speaker, an MC, and an auctioneer. In my 14 years, which seems like a long time, I've raised just over $125 million for charity. And for me, this 14 years has been one of the best of my life. To be able to see the work that I do manifest in the missions that people who serve organizations like you all do, and helping kids with cancer and dogs from euthanasia and every other cause out there, it's just been amazing. So one of the things I did during the pandemic is I took the time to go back and catalog and write all of the research and all of the work that we did over 14 years in delivering those 700 auctions. And it came out to be a high-level strategy online course. We call it Conviction of the Heart, and it's 30 profitable growth fundraising strategy hacks. So it is what we talked about here today is here are some options of what you can do with a paddle raise. Here are some options of what you can do with an online auction or a live auction. So this class is 7 hours of content. It is a 75-page workbook. It is 6 regular modules, which is the psych of fundraising, storytelling that converts, event merchandising, event promotion, event production, and event night chemistry. And we balance all throughout this class through online, virtual, and in-person. And so it's available to take. The regular price of the class is $897. In our pre-launch phase, we priced it at $397. And then you get 2 bonuses by coming to this webinar with Trellis. The first bonus is included in the class, and you get 5 amazing planning forms. One is the ultimate planning guide. So no matter where you've started in the process, you have your audience dialed, you have your story sound bites, you have your donor magic and your paddle raise takes, you have the event merchandising, the promotion, in one place in this document how your event is shaping up and what you're doing at every stretch of the moment, right? And what volunteer or what staff member has been assigned to all those tasks. We are providing 2 or 3 samples of the run of show, a very detailed one in Microsoft Excel, and then we've got a couple of smaller, a little bit simpler ones in Microsoft Word. We have a spreadsheet with your social media planning and calendar, which can always be a nebulous thing for anyone, unless you're a professional social media poster, right? And then we've got some script samples so that you can write the proper scripts for each one of your performers. So the bonus that we're giving away today is if you sign up for our class at that $397 within the next 7 days, we are going to do a 4-week bonus coaching call So that's 1 hour a week for 4 weeks on whatever it is you want to talk about, whether it's storytelling and how to write the appropriate story, whether it's merchandising the event, understanding your audience, however, whatever the group decides they want to talk about. We'll do some live coaching and a live call and give you as much value for that as we can. So that's our special thing.
Wow, that's fantastic, Shelly. Just because I have got to hear a lot more about this course than our attendees have, I actually want to ask you a question about your course. So you have said the words donor magic to me so many times, and I know that that is something that comes up within your course. Do you mind just kind of briefly talking about what that is and how you might create it?
Absolutely. So donor magic is the 5th lesson in the first module. We have it under the psych of fundraising because donor magic is all about psychology. So donor magic for us is understanding how people, number one, learn, and then crafting your short, pithy sound bites to match those styles. So people learn in 3 basic ways. Auditorily, they want to hear something with the voice or a presentation. Visually, they want to see color, they want to see graphics, they want to see something flowing. And 3 is kinesthetically, they want to get hands-on. They want to be involved. They want to volunteer. They want something to happen. They want their dollars. They want to know what their dollars will do, right? So those 3 styles. So when we talk about donor magic, that is where you take your dollar amounts from the paddle race, whether you start at $100,000 and you end at $100, or however that is broken down for you. And underneath every dollar amount, you craft a short, pithy soundbite that explains what that dollar amount will do for your organization and the mission that you serve. So as an example, $100,000. Many organizations don't really give this a ton of thought, and no disrespect on that, because you've got, 1,027 things to do every day, right? But a lot of organizations will think, okay, $100,000. Well, we feed hungry families. So we'll just say, hey, $100,000 will help us feed 500 families, right? But that doesn't really, that doesn't inspire immediate action. What if you said with $100,000, instead of going right into the 100K, you could say something like, every night in our community, 525 families go without a meal. Imagine for a $100,000, we could feed 472 of those families, which is just $200 a family, or 63 cents a night, right? So do you see the difference? Hey, here's a bucket. We need $100,000 to feed 500 families. And in the second statement, you're actually painting the story picture of why that $100,000 is important and what it means. So in creating that donor magic, you're taking the dollar amount, you're associating it with your mission and what you're looking to raise and what that will do for your community. At the same time, you're instilling the value of what your donors' dollars will do for your community. I know it was a long answer, but that is donor magic.
Thanks, Shelly. That's awesome. While you're explaining, we actually just got a question pop up in the chat as to if an organization can sign up for the course and have more than one person attend.
Typically, it is 1 seat per license. However, because it's nonprofit and I am all in that nonprofit world, I don't mind if you one person, let's say, I'm gonna call you Leah because I don't know your name.
It's Donna. It's a question from Donna.
Donna. Okay, Donna. Donna, if you bought a seat to this class, you would have lifetime access to the class, and lifetime access to all of the modules and all of the updates and everything moving forward. What I can't do is say you buy this one seat and 5 of you can get online to watch the class. What you can do is you can have up to 5 people learning with you at one time. So if you had everyone come to your office, or you had a committee where you wanted to meet at your home at night or whatever, you can have up to 5 people take the class with you. The only caveat is you will only have one logon and it'll be tied to your devices. So it's not like you could take the logon and email it to somebody else and then they could log on. Does that make sense? So the answer is yes and no, just depending on how you want to view it.
Awesome. Thanks, Shelly. I'll keep this chat open in case any more questions for Shelly or the Trellis team and myself come in. But this last slide here, or second to last slide, is the little sneak peek. Sorry, yeah, thanks, Shelly.
Sure.
Is the little sneak peek that I mentioned at the beginning of something new that's coming out on Trellis. So currently we can support live auctions and fund a needs, but what we have just recently added into our product is the ability to actually live stream through the platform. So this is going to be a transformational piece to any of your live events, live auctions, fund a needs, whatever you wish to incorporate, because as you can see at the very top of this computer screen here, there's a little navigation bar. There's home, silent auction, and live event. So no longer are you going to have to send your guest to the Zoom link for the event and to XYZ platform for their silent auction and to your website for the event details. It is all going to be really easy for your donors to access all of these things from one link. So hooray to how easy it's going to be for your social sharing and your email messaging as well for that piece. And in this live auction piece, we have all of these different ways that you can customize what we're calling overlays. So an overlay would be an example like that side screen under where it says join our live auction. That's one of our overlays. And so what you can do is create this excitement and this engagement. We're trying to get you as close as we can to what it would be like in a live setting in person through this virtual setting. So the woman on the screen, that would be whoever your auctioneer is. Maybe it's Shelly up there creating all this hype and this excitement. Below it, you can have a little chat pop up so that people can be engaging and saying hello and congratulating people. And then you can choose these little overlays like our live auction. We also have a silent auction one and a fund a need one, and more that are just going to continue to come as we launch these new pieces of this feature. And so this is going to mean that your donors can jump onto the event. They can click that button that says place a bid. They won't have to leave your event. They can just donate right from there, and they can be engaging with everyone while they're watching the live event happen. So if you are looking for a technology piece that is going to enable you to create all of these little engaging games and pieces and aspects and make sure that it's a really easy donor experience, knowing how important that is for most people's client or for most people's donor audiences, definitely come chat to the Trellis team. I know a few of you have already heard about Trellis, but especially for those who haven't yet seen this feature or maybe haven't seen Trellis, myself, Justin, Rebecca, we're all here on this call, so we can answer any questions you have immediately. And then I'll also make sure that you guys have a link to come join us on a demo so you can ask as many questions as you want as to how you can make a really engaging live auction happen for your organization.
Absolutely. And just to jump in and finish on that, I have worked with tens and tens, maybe 20 or 30 software platforms over my career. And I love Trellis. They're crisp, they're clean, they're cutting edge. They're constantly adding new technologies when they've been tested and they're ready to be rolled out. So they're a platform that you can trust, and they are someone that you should take a serious look at.
Awesome. Thank you. Here, we just had a question pop in. So what is your suggestion for a time frame for holding a raffle? I'm going to see just if my colleague Rebecca wants to jump in with any answer on this, because I know that she has worked more closely with raffles. But to be honest, it really depends on the type of raffle you want to do. We've seen some people run just a raffle as their event, and so maybe this lasts about a week. Again, like I had mentioned with the silent auction, kind of around 4 days to a week is probably what I'd say, because you don't want it to go on so long where people kind of lose the excitement in the middle of the time period, but also a couple days might not be enough time for you to kind of create your messaging and social campaign around it. So I'd aim for somewhere between 4 to 7 days if you're just going to do a raffle. But it could also be a great piece that you could add on in addition to an event that you're doing. So think of how long you might have your ticketing open for sale for some live event. You could have a raffle open for that whole time as well. You could highlight your raffle on your event page so people could see those options as they're buying their ticket. And so that would kind of go against what I just said, but when you pair it with an event that you're doing, then you can there's kind of different best practices, you could kind of say. So that's another way to do it, of have the raffle tickets open as long as your event tickets are. And then if you wanted to, you could also do some sort of special draw prize type thing night of. So this might be the type of thing where you say, hey, everybody who donates in the next hour is going to enter into this draw prize, for example. So depending on the type of raffle you want to do, there's kind of all these different variations. I just noticed that Rebecca turned off her mic, so I'll see if she has anything that she wants to add from what she's seen.
Yeah, definitely. One of the other things that we've seen that's worked really well is doing a digital flash raffle. So we worked with an organization called Mamas for Mamas. They are across Canada right now, a national organization. And they partnered with a celebrity influencer, Jillian Harris from Bachelor and Bachelorette, and they just did it for 24 hours. What I loved about that one was it was highly engaged because people had a really short time frame. What worked really well is having an influencer and somebody that was really going to talk about it and get people excited about your raffle. So if you have somebody like that in your community, Jocelyn, that you can partner with to help share the word, to like really get it out there, I'd also take a look at that option. But then again, I'd agree with Emily as well. If you want to give people more time and maybe do something a bit longer, the 4 to 7 mark is what we're seeing for a lot of raffles. And that's been a really great way to get people excited, as well as have enough time to really get the word out and do a lot more promotion leading up to it as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. And thank you, Jocelyn, for the question. Happy we were able to answer that well for you. The final thing that I want to share, assuming we don't get any more questions, is our upcoming webinar. So this is happening 2 weeks today. It'll be the exact same time. I will share the link so that you guys can sign up for it just in the chat. So I'll pop that in here. And then if you want to attend, I'll also be sending this invite just in a follow-up email. So this webinar is going to be on everything Fund a Need. So we have a fantastic partner that's going to be coming in. Lane goes by Lane the Auctionista. And so Lane is going to be coming in, and Lane has done quite a few Fund a Needs in a virtual setting and has developed a ton of expertise in this particular area. And what that has looked like is a lot of pre-planning for success. So in a live setting, you can get away with things kind of happening on the fly, but in a virtual setting, there's a lot that you have to do just to make sure that things are going to go smooth. So some of this means actually talking to your donors and getting people to commit ahead of time. Sometimes this means coming up with fantastic emotional videos that are going to segue into the Fund a Need portion. So all of these different, like very specific pieces to a Fund a Need, we're going to be talking about 2 weeks today with Lane. So if you want to kind of segue from what you learned today into a few more details for a Fund a Need, definitely the place to check out. But if there's no more questions, that is everything that we have for you guys today. We're going to have a lot of these webinars coming up. So if you're interested in these, please continue to follow along. We now have a website page on our website, so you'll be able to find all of our upcoming ones as well. So thank you all for attending, and thank you, Shelly. You have been the expert in the room, most definitely. And so it was fantastic hearing about your course and all of the different ways that you are encouraging people to just continue to engage their donors to raise more for their organization. So thank you, Shelly.
Absolutely. I'm grateful to you and to everyone who's attended, because the better we can get at this, the more people that we get to help in the world. And you know, why would we be here if we didn't want to help?
Yeah, most definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shelly, and thank you to everyone who had attended. And hopefully we will see you in 2 weeks when we dive into how to create a very successful fund a need.
Sounds awesome. Have a great day, y'all.